Jake Morrison pressed his face against the viewing window and watched the stars drift by. 6 months ago, he had been just another soldier on Earth. Now he was floating through space on his way to the most important training facility in the galaxy. The Galactic Defense Academy sat on Meridian Prime, a massive space station that housed cadets from dozens of different worlds. The transport ship shuddered as it approached the docking bay. Jake grabbed his bag and joined the line of new arrivals. He looked around at the other passengers and tried not to stare. There were beings he had only seen in training videos back on Earth. A tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms stood near the front of the line. Behind him, something that looked like a walking tree swayed gently from side to side. Jake had trained hard to get here. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 5 years, and they were still proving themselves. The Galactic Defense Academy only accepted the best candidates from each world. Out of millions of human soldiers, only a few dozen had been chosen to attend. The docking process finished with a loud clang. The doors opened and Jake stepped onto Meridian Prime for the first time. The station was huge beyond anything he had imagined. The main corridor stretched out of sight in both directions. Alien beings walked, floated, and crawled past him without giving him a second glance. A voice echoed through speakers in the ceiling. New arrivals report to Orientation Hall 7. Follow the blue lights on the floor. Jake followed the lights through a maze of corridors. The walls were covered with symbols he could not read and screens showing information in languages he did not understand. Other new cadets walked beside him, all looking as confused as he felt. The orientation hall was enormous. Hundreds of beings filled the seats, representing every shape and size Jake could imagine. He found an empty seat next to another human, cadet. The man looked about Jake's age with short brown hair and nervous eyes. Kevin Brooks, the man whispered, extending his hand. Jake Morrison, Jake replied, shaking it. You from Earth too? Yeah, from the Mars colonies. You? Earth proper. Chicago training facility. They were interrupted by a loud sound that might have been a gong or might have been something clearing its throat. A massive reptilian creature walked onto the stage. It stood at least 8 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to look right through the audience. I am Commander Vextar, the creature said in perfect English. Somehow, Jake realized, he was hearing it in English while the alien next to him was probably hearing it in his own language. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy. You are here because your worlds believe you have potential. I am here to find out if they were right. The commander's yellow eyes swept across the crowd. You come from different worlds, different cultures, different biologies. Some of you breathe oxygen. Others require methane or sulfur compounds. Some of you see in what humans call visible light. Others see heat or electrical fields or magnetic patterns. Despite these differences, you must learn to work together. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The commander's voice carried absolute authority. The galaxy is not a peaceful place, Commander Vextar continued. There are pirates, raiders, and worse things that threaten trade routes and colony worlds. The Galactic Defense Force exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If you graduate from this academy, you will join that force. If you do not graduate, you will return to your home worlds. A new voice spoke from somewhere Jake could not see. The failure rate is 67%. A crystalline being floated onto the stage. It looked like a collection of blue and white crystals arranged in roughly human shape. When it moved, the crystals chimed softly against each other. I am Professor Zelna, the being said. I will oversee your academic studies. Commander Vextar will handle your physical training. Together, we will determine which of you has what it takes to serve the galaxy. Jake looked around the room, again. Many of the alien cadets were huge compared to humans. The Crithari looked like 8-foot-tall armored dinosaurs. The Granathians had muscles on top of muscles and came from a world with 3 times Earth's gravity. The Veltari moved with liquid grace, their 4 arms coordinating perfectly. Next to Kevin, Jake spotted 2 more humans. One was a woman about his age with short black hair and serious eyes. She sat perfectly straight and seemed to be studying every word the instructor said. The other was a young man with red hair who kept fidgeting in his seat. Your training begins tomorrow, Commander, Vextar announced. You will be assigned quarters based on your atmospheric and dietary requirements. Humans, follow Instructor Kael'th. Krathari, follow Instructor Mordun. A being that looked like a cross between an octopus and a jellyfish floated toward the human cadets. Jake counted quickly and saw about 30 humans in the crowd. Not many considering Earth's population. They followed Instructor Kael'th through more corridors. The human quarters were in a section designed for oxygen breathing species. The gravity was set to Earth normal and the air smelled like home. You will share rooms in pairs, Instructor Kael'th said in a voice that sounded like water running over rocks. Jake Morrison and Kevin Brooks, Lisa Parker and Amy Chen, Danny Walsh and Ryan Garcia. Jake found his room number on the wall display. It was small but comfortable, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a shared bathroom. Kevin was already there, unpacking his single bag. This is it, Kevin said, looking around. 6 months of training, assuming we make it that long. Jake sat on his bed and thought about home. His family had been proud when he was selected for the academy. His younger sister had made him promise to send pictures of aliens. His parents had worried he would not come back. What do you think our chances are? Kevin asked. Jake looked out the small window at the stars beyond. Better than 67% failure rate sounds. You sure about that? Did you see the size of some of those other cadets? That Krathari looked like it could bite a human in half. Size isn't everything, Jake said, though he was not entirely convinced. Back on Earth, he had been considered strong and fast. Here, surrounded by beings evolved on different worlds with different challenges, he felt small. A chime sounded through the room's speakers. Dinner is served in Dining Hall 4. Follow the green lights. The dining hall was another massive space filled with cadets from dozens of worlds. Each species seemed to have its own section with appropriate food. The human section served something that looked and smelled like actual Earth food. Jake sat with Kevin and the other humans. Lisa Parker turned out to be from the European Union's space program. She was serious and focused, asking detailed questions about the training schedule. Danny Walsh was from Australia and seemed to find everything amusing. Ryan Garcia was quiet and kept to himself. Amy Chen sat at the end of the table, eating slowly and listening to the conversations around her. When Jake tried to include her in the discussion, she gave short answers and went back to her food. Where are you from, Amy? Lisa asked. California, Amy replied without looking up. What branch of service? Army. Danny laughed. Come on, we're all friends here. What unit? What did you do? Amy looked at him for a moment, then back at her food. That's classified. The conversation moved on, but Jake noticed that Amy continued to listen to everything while saying nothing. She watched the other cadets, both human and alien, with eyes that seemed to notice everything. After dinner, Jake walked back to his quarters with Kevin. The corridors were quieter now, with most cadets in their rooms preparing for tomorrow's training. What do you think Amy's story is? Kevin asked. Jake shrugged. Probably just shy. Some people don't like talking about their military service. Maybe. But did you see how she watched everyone? Like she was memorizing faces. Jake had noticed, but he did not want to think too much about it. Tomorrow would bring their first real training sessions, and he needed to focus on proving himself worthy of being here. He fell asleep thinking about home and wondering if he would ever see Earth again. 3 weeks had passed since Jake arrived at the academy. He had settled into the routine of morning exercises, afternoon classes, and evening study sessions. The human cadets had grown closer, forming a tight group among the dozens of alien species on the station. Jake found himself enjoying the physical training more than the academic work. He was stronger than most of the other humans and had started to feel confident about his abilities. The obstacle courses designed for mixed species were challenging, but not impossible. He had even managed to keep up with some of the larger alien cadets during endurance runs. The morning alarm buzzed through the dormitory. Jake rolled out of bed and shook Kevin awake. They had combat assessment class first thing, which was always Jake's favorite part of the day. Come on, sleepyhead, Jake said, pulling on his training uniform. Combat class starts in 20 minutes. Kevin groaned and sat up. Why does it have to be so early? Some of us need more sleep than others. They met Lisa, Danny, and the other humans in the corridor outside their rooms. Amy walked with them but stayed quiet as usual. Jake had tried several times to get her to open up, but she always gave short answers and changed the subject. The combat training hall was the largest space on the station that Jake had seen. The ceiling stretched up several stories, and the floor was covered with different types of mats and training equipment. Weapons racks lined the walls, holding everything from simple staffs to advanced energy weapons. Commander Vextar stood in the center of the room, his yellow eyes scanning the arriving cadets. Professor Zelna floated nearby, her crystalline form catching the light and casting rainbow patterns on the walls. "Today you will demonstrate what you have learned," Commander Vextar announced. His voice carried easily across the large space. "You will be paired for sparring matches. These are not fights to the death. They are controlled demonstrations of technique and strategy." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was what he had been training for. He looked around at the other cadets and tried to guess who he might be paired with. The Krathari cadet Thurok stood near the back, his armored hide gleaming under the lights. The Veltari named Cesara moved her forearms in what might have been nervous gestures. "Each species has different physical advantages," Professor Zelna said, her voice like wind chimes. "The Krathari have natural armor and great strength. The Veltari have speed and multiple limbs. The Gornathians have incredible endurance from their high-gravity world." Jake nodded along with the explanation. He had studied the different species and their abilities. Humans were somewhere in the middle for most physical traits, but they were supposed to be good at adapting to new situations. "The purpose of this exercise is not to prove which species is strongest," Commander Vextar continued. "It is to show that you can adapt your fighting style to face different types of opponents. In the field, you will work with beings very different from yourselves." The commander pulled out a small device that looked like a crystal cube. "Pairings will be random. When I call your names, step forward and bow to your opponent. Remember, this is about technique, not violence." Jake's palms began to sweat. He hoped he would not be paired with one of the massive Krathari. Their natural armor made them almost impossible to hurt with bare hands, and their strength advantage was enormous. "First pairing," Commander Vextar called out. Thurok of the Krathari and Zephon of the Veltari. The 8-foot armored dinosaur-like being stepped forward. His opponent was much smaller but moved with liquid grace. Jake watched as they bowed to each other according to Academy protocol. "Begin," the commander said. The match was over in seconds. Zephon used his speed and forearms to confuse Thurok, then applied a joint lock that forced the larger being to submit. Thurok's armor had not helped him against an opponent who targeted his joints and pressure points. "Excellent demonstration," Professor Zelna commented. "Speed and technique can overcome brute strength when properly applied." Jake felt a little better about his chances. Maybe size was not everything after all. "Second pairing," Commander Vextar announced. Morgoth of the Gornathians and Kesara of the Gelni. This match lasted longer. The Gornathian was incredibly strong, but his opponent was made of living metal and seemed to be nearly indestructible. They grappled for several minutes before Morgoth managed to pin Kesara using superior leverage. Jake watched each match carefully, trying to learn from what he saw. The alien fighting styles were unlike anything he had studied on Earth. Some relied on natural weapons like claws or stingers. Others used abilities that humans did not possess, like the ability to change their body shape or density. "Jake Morrison, of Earth," Commander Vextar called out. Jake's heart jumped. This was it. He stepped forward and waited to hear who his opponent would be. "Amy Chen of Earth." Jake blinked in surprise. He had expected to face one of the alien cadets. Amy stepped forward from the group of humans, her expression calm and unreadable. Kevin whispered something to Danny, and both of them looked concerned. Lisa frowned and shook her head slightly. Jake wondered why his fellow humans seemed worried about this pairing. Amy was small compared to Jake. She stood maybe 5 feet 4 inches tall, with a slight build that made her look almost fragile next to the larger cadets. Jake had at least 6 inches and probably 50 pounds on her. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her dark eyes showed no emotion. "Step forward and bow," Commander Vextar instructed. Jake and Amy moved to the center of the training mat. The other cadets formed a circle around them, with humans on one side and various alien species on the other. Jake could hear quiet conversations in languages he did not understand. He bowed to Amy according to Academy protocol. She returned the bow with precise movements, her eyes never leaving his face. "This should be interesting," Thurok rumbled to another Krathari. "Two humans fighting each other. We will see what they are truly capable of." Cesara's forearms moved in what Jake had learned was a gesture of curiosity. "I have heard conflicting reports about human combat abilities. Some say they are weak because they lack natural weapons. Others claim they are dangerous for reasons that were not explained." Jake tried to ignore the comments from the alien cadets. He focused on Amy, trying to read her body language and guess what her strategy might be. She stood in a relaxed position that did not give away her intentions. "Remember," Professor Zelna announced, "this is a demonstration of technique. Show, control, and precision. The match ends when one participant submits or is unable to continue safely." Commander Vextar raised his hand. "Fighters ready?" Jake nodded and shifted into a fighting stance he had learned during his military training on Earth. Amy did not change her position, but Jake noticed that her weight was balanced evenly on both feet. "Begin," the commander said. Jake started cautiously. He did not want to hurt Amy, especially not in front of the alien instructors. She was a fellow human, and he felt protective of her even though he barely knew her. He moved forward slowly, testing her reactions. Amy watched him approach, but did not move to attack or defend. Jake interpreted this as uncertainty on her part. The alien cadets watched with obvious interest. Some of them had never seen humans fight before. Earth was still new to the galactic community, and human combat techniques were not well understood by other species. Jake decided to end the match quickly and cleanly. He did not want to embarrass Amy or make her look weak in front of the aliens. He moved in to grab her in a hold that would let him control the match without hurting her. Amy's calm expression did not change. She waited until Jake was committed to his attack, then moved. What happened next was so fast that Jake barely understood it. Amy stepped to the side, caught his extended arm, and did something that sent pain shooting through his shoulder. Jake found himself off balance and stumbling forward. He recovered quickly and turned to face her again. Amy had returned to her original relaxed position, as if nothing had happened. "Interesting," Thurok commented. "The small human has some skill." Jake felt his face flush with embarrassment. He had underestimated Amy, and now the alien cadets were commenting on it. He decided to take the match more seriously. He moved in again, this time with more speed and aggression. Amy avoided his attacks with minimal movements, never seeming to put much effort into her defense. Jake began to press harder, using his size and strength advantages. The other humans watched nervously. Kevin looked like he wanted to say something but did not dare interrupt the match. Lisa had her hands clenched into fists. Amy continued to avoid Jake's attacks, but he noticed that she was not counterattacking. She seemed content to let him tire himself out while she waited for something. Jake realized that he was breathing harder than he should be. Amy, on the other hand, looked completely calm and relaxed. Her breathing was steady, and she moved like she could keep this up all day. "End this," Jake muttered to himself. He decided to use his wrestling training to take Amy to the ground where his size advantage would be decisive. He lunged forward, aiming to grab Amy around the waist and drive her down to the mat. This was a technique that had worked well against opponents on Earth, and he was confident it would work here. Jake charged forward with everything he had. This was his moment to end the match and show the alien cadets what humans could do. He aimed for Amy's waist, planning to tackle her to the ground where his size and weight would give him the advantage. Amy stood perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then she moved. What happened next was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced in his years of military training. Amy did not try to avoid his tackle. Instead, she stepped slightly to one side and did something with her hands that Jake could not follow. Suddenly, Jake was flying through the air. His own momentum carried him past Amy and sent him tumbling across the training mat. He hit the ground hard and rolled several times before coming to a stop. The training hall went completely silent. Every cadet, Human and alien alike stared at what had just happened. Jake pushed himself up on his hands and knees, trying to understand how he had ended up on the floor. Amy stood exactly where she had been before, looking down at Jake with the same calm expression. She was not even breathing hard. "How did you do that?" Jake asked, getting to his feet. Amy did not answer. She simply returned to her ready position and waited for him to continue the match. Jake looked around the circle of watching cadets. The aliens were murmuring to each other in their various languages. Thurok's yellow eyes were fixed on Amy with what might have been respect. Cesara's forearms moved in rapid patterns that Jake had learned meant excitement or surprise. The human cadets looked shocked. Kevin's mouth was hanging open. Danny had stopped smiling for the first time since Jake had met him. Lisa was staring at Amy like she had never seen her before. "Continue," Commander Vextar ordered. His reptilian voice showed no emotion, but Jake thought he detected a hint of interest. Jake approached more carefully this time. Whatever Amy had done, it had used his own strength and speed against him. He needed to be smarter about his attacks. He started with quick jabs and kicks, testing Amy's defenses without committing fully to any single attack. Amy deflected each strike with minimal effort, her movements precise and economical. Jake began to notice things he had missed before. Amy's footwork was perfect. She never seemed to be off balance even when avoiding his attacks. Her hands moved in ways that suggested training far beyond what the Academy provided. "She knows things we do not," Zephan whispered to another Veltari. "Watch how she positions herself. She is always ready for the next move." Jake heard the comment and felt a flash of irritation. He was supposed to be the one impressing the aliens, not Amy. He decided to increase his aggression and try to overwhelm her with rapid combinations. He threw a series of punches and kicks, each one faster and harder than the last. Amy avoided them all, but Jake noticed that she was moving more now. Maybe he was starting to pressure her. Amy continued to avoid his attacks without counterattacking. Jake began to wonder why she was not trying to end the match. She had already proven she could throw him around, so why was she holding back? "Fight back," Jake said between attacks. "This is supposed to be a sparring match, not a dance." Amy's expression did not change, but Jake thought he saw something flicker in her dark eyes. She nodded once, as if accepting his challenge. The change in Amy was immediate. Instead of just avoiding Jake's attacks, she began to move forward. Her defensive posture shifted into something more aggressive, and Jake suddenly found himself on the defensive. Amy's strikes came from angles Jake had not expected. She targeted joints and pressure points with surgical precision. Jake realized that she had been studying his movements throughout the match, learning his patterns and weaknesses. "Remarkable," Professor Zelna chimed. "The small human has been analyzing her opponent's technique while appearing to be on the defensive." Jake tried to adapt to Amy's new approach, but she was always one step ahead of him. Every time he thought he had figured out her pattern, she would change tactics and attack from a new direction. The alien cadets were no longer whispering. They watched in complete silence as Amy systematically dismantled Jake's defenses. Her movements were fluid and purposeful, wasting no energy on unnecessary actions. Jake began to realize that he was in serious trouble. Amy was not just better than he had expected. She was operating on a completely different level than anyone else in the room. Her technique was flawless, her timing perfect, and her control absolute. He tried to create distance between them, hoping to reset the match and find a new strategy. Amy did not let him retreat. She stayed close, applying constant pressure and forcing Jake to react to her movements. "Where did she learn to fight like that?" Kevin whispered to Danny. "I have no idea," Danny replied. "That is not anything they teach in basic training." Lisa was watching Amy with growing understanding. "Remember what she said about her background being classified? I think we are seeing why." Jake was breathing hard now, sweat dripping into his eyes. Amy looked like she could continue fighting for hours without getting tired. Her movements remained precise and controlled, showing no signs of fatigue. The alien cadets began to show different reactions. Some looked impressed by Amy's skill. Others seemed worried about what they were witnessing. Thurok's massive form had gone completely still, his predator instincts recognizing a dangerous opponent. "This is not normal human combat training," Morgoth rumbled to his Gornathian companion. "This is something else entirely." Jake made one more desperate attempt to turn the match around. He feinted left, then drove right, hoping to catch Amy off guard with a sudden change of direction. Amy, read his intention perfectly. She moved with him, using his own momentum to guide him into a position where she had complete control. Jake found his arm twisted behind his back in a hold that sent pain shooting through his shoulder. "Submit," Amy said quietly. These were the first words she had spoken during the entire match. Jake tried to break free from the hold, but any movement he made only increased the pressure on his arm. Amy had him completely controlled with what seemed like minimal effort. "I said submit," Amy repeated, her voice still calm but with an edge of steel. Jake realized he had no choice. Amy could probably break his arm if she wanted to, and he was helpless to stop her. The smart thing to do was tap out and end the match before he got hurt. But something in Jake rebelled against the idea of losing to Amy in front of all these alien cadets. He was supposed to be representing humanity, showing that humans belonged in the galactic community. Losing to a small woman who barely spoke to anyone would be humiliating. He tried one more time to break free, throwing all his remaining strength into twisting away from Amy's hold. Amy's grip tightened. Jake felt something in his arm shift in a way that arms were not supposed to shift. Pain exploded through his shoulder and down into his hand. "Last warning," Amy said. "Submit now, or I will end this match my way." Jake looked around the circle of watching cadets. The aliens were staring at him with expressions he could not read. His fellow humans looked worried and confused. Commander Vexitar and Professor Zelna watched without intervening. Jake's pride would not let him give up. He had come too far and worked too hard to quit now. If Amy wanted to hurt him, let her try. He would show everyone that humans did not give up easily. "No," Jake said through gritted teeth. Amy sighed softly as if she had expected this response, but hoped for better. "Then we do this the hard way," she said. Jake felt Amy shift her grip slightly. The pain in his arm increased, but he held on. He would not tap out. He would not surrender. Amy looked up at Commander Vexitar, who nodded once. She looked back at Jake with what might have been regret. "I am sorry about this," she said. Then Amy did something that Jake would remember for the rest of his life. She applied pressure to his arm in a way that felt like physics itself was working against him. Jake felt his bones bend in directions. They were never meant to bend. The crack was loud enough for everyone in the training hall to hear clearly. The sound of Jake's arm breaking echoed through the training hall like a gunshot. For a moment, nobody moved. The crack hung in the air, followed by Jake's scream of pain and shock. Jake dropped to his knees on the training mat, staring at his right arm in disbelief. It bent at an angle that arms were not supposed to bend. The bone had snapped cleanly just above his elbow, and his forearm hung at an impossible angle. Amy released her hold immediately and stepped back. Her face showed no emotion, but she watched Jake carefully as if making sure he did not need further medical attention. "Medical team to Training Hall 1, Commander Vexitar spoke into his communication device. His yellow eyes moved between Jake and Amy, showing what might have been satisfaction. The alien cadets stared in complete silence. Some had seen combat before, but most had never witnessed such a clean and decisive end to a sparring match. Thurok's massive form was frozen in place, his predator instincts recognizing that he had just watched something significant. The human cadets rushed toward Jake, but Professor Jelna's crystalline form blocked their path. "Do not move him," she chimed. "Wait for the medical team." Kevin stood at the edge of the mat, his face pale with shock. "Jake, are you okay? Can you hear me?" Jake nodded weakly, still staring at his broken arm. The pain was incredible, but worse than the physical damage was the humiliation. He'd been completely dominated by someone he had dismissed as weak and quiet. The medical team arrived within minutes. Two beings that looked like walking plants carefully loaded Jake onto a floating stretcher. They moved with practiced efficiency, stabilizing his arm and giving him something for the pain. As they carried him toward the medical bay, Jake looked back at Amy. She stood exactly where the match had ended, watching him leave with those same dark, unreadable eyes. The training hall remained silent until Jake disappeared through the doors. Then the whispered conversations began. "Did you see how easily she controlled him?" Cesara asked another Veltari. "She used his own strength against him throughout the entire match." The small human knew exactly where to apply pressure, Thurak rumbled. "That was not luck or accident. That was precise knowledge of anatomy and leverage." Commander Vextar called for attention. "Training will continue. The next pairing is Kesara and Mordun." But none of the cadets were paying attention to the new match. They kept looking at Amy, who had moved to the side of the training area and was stretching as if nothing unusual had happened. Danny approached Kevin and the other humans. "What just happened? How did Amy do that?" "I have no idea," Kevin replied, his voice shaking. "Jake is twice her size. He has been training since he was a teenager. There is no way she should have been able to break his arm like that." Lisa was staring at Amy with a new understanding. "Remember what she said on the first day? About her background being classified?" "So what?" Danny asked. "We all have military backgrounds. That does not explain what we just saw." "No," Lisa said slowly. "Not like that. I think Amy is something different. Something we do not understand." The remaining sparring matches continued, but everyone was distracted. The alien cadets kept glancing at Amy and whispering among themselves. The humans stayed in a tight group, unsure of what to think about their fellow cadet. After the class ended, the human cadets gathered in the corridor outside the training hall. Amy walked past them without stopping, heading toward the dormitory section. "Amy, wait," Lisa called. Out, Amy stopped and turned around. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she looked directly at the other humans. "What?" she asked. "We need to talk," Lisa said. "About what just happened in there." Amy glanced around the corridor, checking for alien cadets who might be listening. "Not here. Meet me in Recreation Room 7 in 1 hour. Come alone." She walked away before anyone could respond. An hour later, Lisa found herself sitting across from Amy in an empty recreation room. The space was designed for quiet activities with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. "The others wanted to come," Lisa said. "I know," Amy replied, "but this conversation is not for them, not yet." Lisa leaned forward. "What are you, Amy? Because what I saw today was not normal human combat training." Amy was quiet for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "What do you know about Earth's military development over the past 50 years? "The basics. We developed space capabilities, made contact with alien species, joined the galactic community. That is the public version," Amy said. "The reality is more complicated. When we first encountered alien species, we realized that humans were physically weak compared to most galactic civilizations. We had no natural armor, no claws, no enhanced strength or speed." Lisa nodded. "That is why so few humans were accepted into the academy. We are not physically impressive. The military leadership saw this as a problem," Amy continued. "If humans were going to survive in a galaxy full of stronger species, we needed advantages that other species did not have." "What kind of advantages?" Amy looked directly at Lisa. "The kind that come from thousands of years of humans fighting and killing other humans." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Most alien species developed combat techniques for hunting prey or defending against predators," Amy explained. "Their fighting styles are designed for opponents with different strengths and weaknesses than their own." "But humans fight humans," Lisa said, beginning to understand. "Exactly. We have spent our entire history perfecting ways to kill beings with the same physical capabilities we have. No natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced abilities. Just technique, leverage, and knowledge of anatomy. Amy stood up and walked to the window overlooking the station's main corridor. The military created a special program. They took the most effective human combat techniques from every culture and time period. Martial arts, military training, assassination methods, torture techniques, everything. And you were part of this program? I was more than part of it, Amy said. I was one of the final products. My training began when I was 8 years old. By the time I was 18, I could kill most beings in this galaxy with my bare hands. Lisa stared at Amy in shock. That is why your background is classified. The galactic community does not know that humans have this capability, Amy said. They think we are weak and harmless. The Earth government wants to keep it that way for as long as possible. But why are you here? Why are you at the academy if you are already trained? Amy turned back to face Lisa. Because someone needs to watch over the other humans. To make sure they survive their training and understand what they are really capable of. Jake did not know, Lisa said. None of you know, Amy replied. You have standard military training, which is excellent by galactic standards, but it is nothing compared to what humans are really capable of when we stop holding back. Lisa thought about the sparring match, about how easily Amy had controlled Jake throughout the entire fight. You were holding back today, were you not? Amy nodded. If I had not been holding back, Jake would be dead. I gave him multiple chances to submit. When he refused, I had to choose between breaking his arm or doing something much worse. The alien cadets know something happened, Lisa said. They are talking about it. Let them talk, Amy said. It is good for them to understand that humans are not as weak as they appear, but they should not know the full extent of our capabilities. Not yet. Lisa felt overwhelmed by everything she had learned. What do I tell the others? Tell them that I have advanced training that they do not. Tell them that humans are more dangerous than most aliens realize. But do not tell them about the program or the extent of my abilities. Why are you telling me this? Amy looked at Lisa for a long moment. Because you asked the right questions. And because if something happens to me, someone needs to know the truth about what Earth has been preparing for. What do you mean if something happens to you? The galaxy is not as peaceful as the instructors pretend, Amy said. There are threats out there that most species cannot handle. That is why humans are really here, not to learn from other species but to be ready when those threats arrive. Lisa left the recreation room with her mind spinning. She walked back to the dormitory in a daze, trying to process everything Amy had told her. In the medical bay, Jake lay on a bed with his arm in a regeneration cast. The alien medical technology would heal his bone completely within a few days, but the psychological impact would last much longer. Kevin sat beside his bed, still trying to understand what had happened. The doctors say you will be fine in 3 days. My arm is not what I am worried about, Jake said quietly. What do you mean? Jake stared at the ceiling. I have been training to fight my whole life. I thought I was good at it. Today I learned that I do not know anything about fighting. Amy is just better trained than we thought. No, Jake said. Amy is something else entirely, and if she represents what humans are really capable of, then we have been lying to ourselves about what we are. Outside the medical bay, alien cadets whispered among themselves about what they had witnessed. Some were impressed by Amy's skill. Others were concerned about what it meant for the future of human-alien relations. In her quarters, Amy sat at her desk and wrote a report that would be transmitted to Earth through encrypted channels. 3 days later, Jake returned to training with his arm completely healed. The alien medical technology had worked perfectly, leaving no trace of the break except in his memory. But something fundamental had changed in how he saw himself and his place at the academy. He walked into the combat training hall with Kevin beside him. The other cadets watched as he entered, alien and human alike. Word of what had happened had spread throughout the station, and everyone wanted to see how Jake would react to facing Amy again. Amy was already there, stretching in her usual spot near the weapons rack. She looked up when Jake entered and nodded, once in acknowledgement. Her expression was the same calm, unreadable mask she always wore. Commander Vextar called the class to attention. Today we will continue with paired combat exercises. However, we will focus on technique analysis rather than actual sparring. Jake felt relief wash over him. He was not ready to face Amy in combat again, and he suspected he never would be. "Morrison," the commander called out. "Step forward." Jake walked to the center of the training mat, wondering what the instructor had planned for him. "Your match with Chen 3 days ago provided valuable lessons for all cadets," Commander Vextar said. "Tell the class what you learned." Jake looked around at the circle of watching faces. Alien eyes stared at him with curiosity, and what might have been respect. The human cadets watched with sympathy and concern. "I learned that I do not know as much about fighting as I thought I did," Jake said honestly. "I made assumptions about my opponent based on size and appearance. Those assumptions were wrong." "Continue," the commander prompted. "I also learned that there are different kinds of strength," Jake said, the words coming easier now. "Physical, size is just one factor. Technique, training, and mental preparation matter more." Thurok, the massive Krathari cadet, spoke up. "But how did the small human defeat you so easily? Your species appears to have similar physical capabilities." Jake looked at Amy, who watched him without expression. "I think there are things about humans that we do not fully understand yet. Things that even we do not know about ourselves." Professor Zhelna's crystalline form chimed softly. "An interesting observation. Each species brings unique advantages to the galactic community. Perhaps humans have capabilities that are not immediately obvious." After the class ended, Jake found himself walking beside Amy toward the dormitory section. They had not spoken since the sparring match, and Jake was not sure what to say. "How is your arm?" Amy asked. "Fine," Jake replied. "Good as new. Thank you for asking." They walked in silence for a few moments before Amy spoke again. "I am sorry I had to break it. You would not submit." "I know," Jake said. "My pride got in the way of my common sense. I should have tapped out when you first asked." "Pride can be useful," Amy said, "but it can also get you killed. In real combat, there are no second chances." Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lisa told me some things about your background, about special training programs." Amy's expression did not change, but Jake sensed a subtle shift in her posture. "What did she tell you?" "Enough to understand that you are not just another cadet. You are here for reasons that go beyond normal academy training." Amy considered this for a moment. "What do you plan to do with that information?" "Nothing," Jake said. "But I want to learn. If there are things about human combat capabilities that I do not know, I want to understand them." "Why?" Jake thought about the question. "Because I came here to represent humanity, to prove that we belong in the galactic community. After our match, I realized that I do not even understand what humanity really is." Amy studied his face as if trying to determine his sincerity. "Learning these things changes you. Once you understand what humans are really capable of, you cannot go back to seeing the galaxy the same way. I am willing to take that risk." Amy nodded slowly. "Meet me in training room 12 after evening meal. Come alone." That evening, Jake found Amy waiting in one of the smaller training rooms. The space was designed for individual practice, with mirrors on the walls and various pieces of equipment scattered around. "Before we begin," Amy said, "you need to understand something. What I'm going to show you is not a game. These techniques were developed to kill, not to win sparring matches." "I understand." "Do you?" Amy asked. "Because once you learn these methods, you will realize that every alien cadet in this academy could be dead within minutes if a human chose to kill them. That knowledge changes how you see everyone around you." Jake felt a chill at Amy's words, but he nodded. "I still want to learn." Amy began with basic movements, showing Jake how to position his body to maximize leverage and minimize his opponent's advantages. The techniques were unlike anything he had learned in his military training on Earth. Most combat training focuses on strength against strength, Amy explained as she demonstrated a joint lock. Human techniques focus on finding weakness and exploiting it. We assume our opponents are stronger, faster, and better armed than we are, Jake tried to copy Amy's movements, but his technique was clumsy compared to her fluid motions. "Why do we fight this way?" Jake asked. "Other species seem to rely on their natural advantages." "Because humans have no natural advantages," Amy replied. "We are not the strongest, fastest, or most durable species in the galaxy, but we are the only species that has spent thousands of years perfecting ways to kill beings exactly like ourselves." Over the following weeks, Jake trained with Amy every evening. She taught him techniques from dozens of different human fighting traditions, all refined and perfected through centuries of warfare. The other human cadets noticed the change in Jake. He moved differently, carried himself with new confidence, and seemed to see things that others missed. Kevin asked him about it, but Jake kept his promise to train alone with Amy. The alien cadets also noticed something different about the humans. During training exercises, Jake and Amy worked together with an efficiency that surprised the instructors. They seemed to anticipate each other's movements and coordinate their actions without speaking. One day, during a group combat simulation, Jake found himself paired with Thurok against two Veltari opponents. The Krathari's size and natural armor made him a formidable ally, but the Veltari were faster and had the advantage of 4 arms each. Jake used the techniques Amy had taught him, targeting weak points in the Veltari anatomy and using their own speed against them. Within minutes, both opponents had been neutralized, and Thurok was staring at Jake with obvious respect. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" the massive alien asked. "From another human," Jake replied. Thurok's yellow eyes narrowed. "Your species is more dangerous than we realized." After the simulation, Commander Vextar called Jake aside. "Your combat abilities have improved significantly in recent weeks. Who has been training you?" Jake looked across the training hall at Amy, who was helping Lisa with a defensive technique. "Someone who understands what humans are really capable of." The commander followed Jake's gaze. "Chen has been teaching you." "Yes, sir. And what have you learned?" Jake considered the question carefully. "I have learned that humans bring something unique to the galactic community. We have perspectives on conflict and survival that other species do not possess." "Explain." "Most species developed in environments where they had clear physical advantages or disadvantages," Jake said. "Humans developed in an environment where our greatest threat was other humans. That created combat techniques and strategic thinking that are unlike anything else in the galaxy." Commander Vextar's reptilian features showed what might have been approval. "And how do you plan to use this knowledge?" "To protect the beings who cannot protect themselves," Jake said. "To serve the galactic community with all the capabilities that humanity possesses." The commander nodded. "That is the correct answer. Morrison, continue your training with Chen, but remember that with knowledge comes responsibility. These abilities must be used wisely." As the weeks passed, the dynamic at the academy shifted. The alien cadets developed a healthy respect for human capabilities. Some, like Thurok, sought out opportunities to train with human partners, wanting to learn from their unique perspectives on combat and strategy. The human cadets, led by Jake's example, began to understand their own heritage differently. They realized that their species' history of conflict had given them skills that were valuable in their new role as galactic peacekeepers. Amy continued her quiet observation and training, preparing her fellow humans for challenges they did not yet understand. Her reports to Earth became more detailed, describing the growing respect and wariness that other species showed toward human capabilities. In his final week at the academy, Jake stood in the same training hall where Amy had broken his arm. The room was full of cadets from dozens of worlds, all preparing to serve together in the Galactic Defense Force. Amy approached him after the day's training session. "How do you feel about what you have learned?" Jake thought about everything that had changed since that first sparring match. "Humbled," he said, "and honored to be part of something larger than myself." "Good," Amy said, "because your real training is just beginning. The galaxy is not as peaceful as these instructors pretend. There are threats out there that require everything humanity can offer."